It is one of the most memorable stories about an encounter with Jesus after the resurrection. Just say the words "road to Emmaus," and many people will instantly know exactly what you're talking about. There's even an organization that goes by this name and that uses these words as the title of a spiritual retreat weekend that they produce. But for all of its familiarity, it is worth pausing to take note of one particular detail in this wonderful story. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024. The story is rather lengthy, so I won't read the whole thing. To summarize it, two of Jesus' followers left Jerusalem on that first day, the day of Jesus' resurrection, to go to the nearby town of Emmaus, described as being some 60 stadia, or about 7 miles from Jerusalem. As they walked along, talking to each other about what they had seen and heard over the last few days, they were joined by a stranger who asked what they were talking about. Surprised that anyone in or around Jerusalem wouldn't know immediately what they were talking about, they told the stranger of the things that they had witnessed, including the fact that some of the women had been to the tomb and had come back and reported it empty. By this time, we know that the stranger is none other than Jesus, but we also know that the two followers had been prevented from recognizing him somehow. Jesus began by upbraiding them for their lack of understanding. He taught them everything about the Messiah in the Old Testament. When they arrived in Emmaus, they invited the stranger to stay with them because it was getting to be late in the day. He agreed to join them and then sat at table with them. And that's where I want to pick up the story. Luke writes, "When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, 'Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?' That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, 'The Lord has risen indeed, and has appeared to Simon.' Then they told what had happened on the road and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread." Hopefully you recognize a portion of this story as being part of the invitation to the Lord's table that I say month in and month out. We say these words about Jesus blessing and breaking bread and the disciples finally recognizing him in the breaking of the bread to indicate that part of what we're doing in the Lord's Supper is seeing Jesus face to face. There is even a beloved communion hymn that reflects this layer of meaning in the Lord's Supper. "Here, O our Lord, we see you face to face. Here would we touch and handle things unseen. Here grasp with firmer hand eternal grace, and all our weariness upon you lean." This passage and the line from this hymn both point to an essential mystery of the Christian faith. They remind us that while we can know a great deal about who Jesus was, what he said, and what he did, based on accounts handed down to us through the gospel narratives, we cannot fully know Jesus except through the sacraments, and especially the sacrament of the Lord's Supper. In a way that can only be described as mysterious, Christ is with us in the breaking of the bread at table. This is in no way to minimize the other ways we come to know Jesus, but it is especially at table that we encounter the crucified and risen Lord. When we read about Jesus in the Gospels, we learn about Jesus. We learn what Jesus taught. We learn the importance of love as our guiding principle in the Christian life. We learn what Jesus did. We learn the importance of sacrificial service to others. We learn about Jesus. But in the Lord's Supper, we encounter Jesus firsthand. He's not mediated to us through the narratives written by some of his earliest followers. He is fully present And that's what this story from Luke is trying to tell us. That it was in the breaking of the bread that the blinders finally fell from these two disciples' eyes, and they recognized his presence in their midst. Turns out, it is still true for us today. Tomorrow, we continue Luke's account of when Jesus appears to the 11 and commissions them for their ministry ahead. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.